In the previous video we talked about the facial attractiveness of some celebrities and YouTubers, and how my female friends rated them. But the face is only one part of physical attractiveness, and we need to talk about height and body too, so I talked to the girls and found out some very interesting things. We're going to use some examples from our previous video, as well as some new ones. But first, some information about the girls. Vasso is around 5 feet 4 inches, which is in the normal range for most countries, but Eva is an outlier. She's around 5 feet 10 inches, and judging by the bell curve for female height, that has to be around top 3% of the female population. I can recall very few girls who are taller than Eva. So let's see their take on height. Vasso's ideal height would be someone over 180, but she would have no problems with someone between 175 and 179. She wouldn't even have a problem with someone a bit over 170 if he had a very good-looking face. I asked her who does he consider a 10 or really close to a 10, and her answer was Chris Hemsworth and Cillian Murphy. I'm like, I think that Murphy is around 172, and she's like, I don't care, he's perfect. But of course there is a lower limit, and she said anyone below 170 would be way too short. I want to feel somewhat protected. So far pretty understandable and reasonable in my opinion, nothing out of the ordinary. What about Eva? Being so tall, her height standards must be out of this world, right? Well, not so much. Ideally she'd want someone over 185 so she can wear her heels on a night out without height-mogging the guy, but she's a smart girl and knows that very few guys meet that height requirement. She'd be totally fine with someone around 180 to 184, or even someone around the same height as hers. If a guy was under 175 would have to be extremely good looking, and under 170 it would be near impossible. Again, nothing weird in my opinion. I know that many black pillars, including myself, would like a cold hard number to calculate their total looks rating, so we try to quantify it. Vasso's height is way more common than Eva's, so taking this into account I came up with the following formula. Under 5 feet 6 inches. 0.5 is way too short for most girls in Western countries. A guy could be an 8 facially, but he would still struggle a lot in dating. It's tough to place a number on this one because it really is a make or break point. So, someone like Daniel Radcliffe, who was rated around a 6 facially, would have no chance with most girls, at least on paper. A guy with a very good looking face can get away with being around 5'7" to 5'9". I guess the quote-unquote penalty would be around -0.5 a point to -1 point. Jacked and Stacked was rated around a 7 facially, and I think he's 5'7", so he would drop to around a 6. Someone around 5'10" to 5'11" would be rated around the same. No points added, or maybe plus 0.5. I think that Wheat Waffles is around 5'10", so he would remain around a 5, or maybe a 5.5 with the right shoes. Someone who's around 6 feet tall to 6'1", would probably get plus 1 point, and some girls are really into super tall guys, so for them, a 6'3" guy who's facially average, could be perceived as a 7 or even more than that. Other girls don't care that much about super tall guys, so as long as you're over 6 feet tall it's going to be the same to them, and a guy who's facially around a 5, for example, would be seen as a 6, even if he was very tall, let's say around 6'4". So Brett Maverick, who got a 7.5 by both girls, would be comfortably above 8, and even approaching a 9 for some girls since he's around 6'3". I want to make it clear that there are obviously limitations to this quote-unquote formula. A girl won't pull out the measuring tape, or ask you to show your ID to confirm your height, but we had to describe what's considered tall and what's considered short somehow. Perception also plays a role. There was a girl who told me that I'm not that tall, so I'm like, how tall do you think I am? And she said, I don't know, maybe around 178. Other girls thought that I was taller than I actually am. Some girls don't care that much about height. On paper, someone like Tom Holland shouldn't be with someone like Zendaya. So again, don't take these numbers to heart. We're trying to get a rough estimate. There are always exceptions to the rule. Speaking of Tom Holland and Zendaya, if you want a more stat-based video, you can watch the one titled, Are You Too Short for Women's Standards?, with this thumbnail on my channel. Now, time to talk about the body. The findings weren't as clear as with the height, but we can still draw some conclusions. I've said in the past that you don't need to become a monster in order to look attractive to women, and a physique like Holland's would be great for most girls. Let's see what the girls had to say. Vasso has almost the same exact opinion on this subject. She likes guys who are primarily lean and have some muscle but not too much. She also said something that it would never cross my mind. We all know about facial harmony, but she also connects the face to the body. Even though she doesn't like too much muscle, she gave a pass to guys who have a more masculine, kinda square jawline, as she found that it suits the overall look. For example, she was okay with Brett Maverick's and Austin Dunham's physiques, but she didn't like Jacked and Stack's body. She asked me how tall he is. I'm like, I think he's a bit over 170. She said that his body makes him look way shorter, and she didn't like it, even though she liked his face. She found men's maxing physique way too much and said that it looks unnatural. Again, it's hard to quantify all of these together, but here's an attempt. Jacked went from a 7 to around a 5.5 when we included height and body. Men's maxing received a 5 facially by Vasso, as she found his face excessively long. She said that in this particular photo he looks better, but in the other two his face was looking very weird, so she went with a 5. And she found his physique so unnatural that she wanted to detract 1 point, but she found his height of around 180 to be a good height, so it all added up to around a 5. Eva had a different definition of the ideal body. It was a funny conversation because I couldn't get what she finds attractive at first. I showed her some bodybuilder type of bodies and she didn't like them at all. I'm like, okay, maybe it's the excessive muscle mass, what about someone like Sean O'Pry or Tom Holland? She's like, it's better than the previous guys but still not ideal. So I asked her what's ideal for her and she showed me this photo of Jason Momoa. So then I finally got it. She likes bulky guys who aren't fat but not too lean either, who have a decent amount of muscle mass, a little different from Vasso who like lean guys a lot. Eva was also harsher on bodybuilders compared to guys who were a bit overweight. Let's see some examples once again. She also detracted from jacked and stacked. She had rated him as a 7.5 facially, but found his body way too much, and being around 170, it all added up to a 6. She rated men's maxing face a 7, quite higher than Vasso, but she also detracted 1 point due to his physique, so if we include height it all added up to 6.5. This particular version of Leonardo DiCaprio also received a 7. Now, before some of you go crazy, I repeat. We're talking about this version of Leo, not Prime Leo, which by the way is an interesting topic for a future video. She didn't mind the dad bod too much and she only detracted half a point, and adding in his height of 183 it all added up to around 7.5. She liked Zayn Malik's face a lot. He was her childhood crush and she gave him an 8.5. If we include his body and height, he drops a bit to about an 8. And this leads us to the next very important point. Who gets benefited the most from being tall and having a good physique? Both girls said that if a guy is facially under a 5, then it doesn't matter how tall he is or how good his body looks. On the opposite side of the spectrum, if a guy looks like Sean O'Pry or Jeremy Meeks, being over 6 feet tall won't change much in terms of dating success. 8s, 9s and 10s get very similar reactions, so debating over a guy being an 8.5 or a 9.5 isn't very practical. However, the guys who are facially between a 5 and a 7 can be benefited the most. A guy who's a 6 for example, who would get a mediocre reaction from women, not instantly rejected but not too warm either, could be perceived as high as an 8 if he's tall and has a nice body, and he'll get treated way better compared to a guy with the same exact face who's average at everything else. I know that all these numbers can get confusing. I mean, my head hurts as I'm making this video. So, let's try to sum up the key points. You don't have to become a bodybuilder and spend your whole life in the gym. Sure, some women are into these types of bodies, but most aren't. Build some muscle, cause most women aren't into guys who are too skinny, but don't overdo it. As far as body fat is concerned, you should reach a level where your face looks lean but you also feel healthy. And I hate to break it to you, not everyone will have an elite facial structure under the fat, even if you drop at 8%, but the vast majority of you will be facially benefited from getting lean. Even Eva, who prefers bulkier guys, admitted that these guys' faces improved a lot by losing weight. So, that's why getting lean should be your priority. You can improve your total looks rating by 1 point to even multiple points, depending on your starting point. With height you can't change much, but you can still improve a little. Improving your posture, choosing the right shoes and possibly adding insoles, can easily give 2 extra inches. Now of course, if you're 5'3" it won't change much, but most guys can go from kinda short to average, or from average to kinda tall. If you're 6'2" and you're thinking about insoles, I don't know what to tell you. I wish you inner peace and some extra IQ points. Jokes aside, I also asked them about the maximum height limit. Vasso said that someone over 6 feet 7 inches would be way too much for her, and Eva said the same about guys over 6 feet 10 inches. But still, both girls would prefer a guy who's too tall compared to a guy who's too short. So, that was the video. Leave your comments below and I'll see you in the next one.